Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear students, we continue our lessons and lectures in Charles Dickens' Hard Times. I believe we dealt with chapter 4, which is entitled Bounderby, which explained the character of Bounderby and how he is portrayed by the writer and how we are supposed to dislike this character from the very beginning. A brief note on Bounderby is, on the chapter I mean, the chapter presents Bounderby's character through his discussion and talks with Mrs. Gradgrind and how shallow he is. We also learn that the character of Bounderby, as a character, he tries to highlight the issue that he has, that he is a self-made man and he made himself from nothing into the businessman of Coketown. And he kept repeating this idea whenever he is asked, whenever he had a chance. So this might trigger something in the mind of the reader, why this character is highlighting this issue more than once. Whenever he had a chance, he tries to give us his, let's say, his motto, his slogan, that he was born in a ditch, he was very poor, his mother left him, his grandmother, let's say, brutalized him or mistreated him, and he made himself from a scratch, from zero, until he became the Bounderby of Coketown, the businessman, the banker, and the person we know in the novel. So we need to highlight this idea because this, whenever he repeats this, we need to understand that this person might not be telling the truth because he is repeating this issue every now and then. The chapter also shows us the encounter between Cecilia and the future of Cecilia and how it has been planned by Mr. Gradgrind and Mr. Bounderby. And their plan is to send Sissy away because of her influence on his kids, whom Mr. Gradgrind found peeking on the circus. Then the writer moves to a new chapter, which is entitled The Keynotes. From the title, we understand that this chapter is important because keynote means an important note, something very important that we need to keep in mind. So, Coketown, as we understand, as the setting of the story now is presented. So we need to also understand how the writer Dickens tries to portray and push forward the plot of his work, the plot of his novel. He started with the basics of the novel, the structure, which is facts. And he explained that in the very beginning, in the first sentence of his novel. And in each page, in each chapter, he tries to present something new. For example, in chapter 2, he described the character of Mr. Gradgrind. He presented the school of facts. He presented the character of Bitzer, the character of Sissy and Child, the officer from the government. In chapter 3, he presented the character of Bounderby and how there is a leak, a breach in the system because his kids were found peeking on the circus and the loophole. And then he presented the character of Bounderby in chapter 4 and how he is described as a simple person, self-made man. So each chapter presents something new. This is the style Dickens follows in his novels, specifically in this one. So now the writer preserves a whole chapter. He dedicates chapter 5 in order to sketch, to describe and tell us about the setting of his story, which is Coketown, the city of Coke, Medinat al-Faham, which is somehow unequivalent to London at his own time. I'd like you to remember the first important issue we discussed, in which we said Hard Times is talking about, which is the Industrial Revolution. So when we read chapter 5, we need to keep in mind the effect of the Industrial Revolution and how it has been reflected in the novel, especially in chapter 5. So Coketown, to which Misters, it means Bounderby and Gradgrind now walked, was a triumph of facts. It had no greater taint of fancy, so there is no existence of fancy. The breach that they found the kids peeking on the circus has been treated, and the kids promised that they will not make this incident again. So now it is a total fact city. Let's strike the keynote Coketown before pursuing our tune. Now the writer says it was a town of red brick. I'd like you to remember how the buildings of the 17th, 18th centuries are structured. Normally the kind of brick used is a red color. It is red brick. And in literature, we also have an idea that the color red is associated with sin or death sometimes. So the writer does not give this spontaneously. It is done on purpose. It was a town of red brick, or of a brick that would have been red if the smoke and ashes had allowed it. If the smoke and the ashes of the Industrial Revolution that the writer talks about had allowed the color of a brick to be red. So it is not red. Actually, it is supposed to be red, but it is covered with the smoke and ashes. Al-ramad wa dukhan. That's why it turned into being black. As matters stood, it was a town of unnatural red and black, like the painted face of a savage. Savage, you know the savages, those people who appear in movies who color their faces with the black colors, just like mud or some kind of ash, either to in disguise or kind of right, taqas. It was a town of machinery and tall chimneys. This is where the Industrial Revolution is totally criticized. Machinery, machines يعني, and tall chimneys. Chimneys يعني مداخن جدا طويلة, from which smoke comes out of the factories, out of which interminable serpents of smoke trailed themselves. From these chimneys we have interminable serpents of smoke. Interminable means غير منقطعة. Serpents فاعي. So the writer gives us a kind of a metaphorical image here. Why this image? Because these serpents of smoke are suffocating the people, as if, just like a snake which turns itself around its prey, حول الفريسة مالتها, squeezing it, تعصرها وتخنقها, suffocate it. So these interminable serpents of smoke are suffocating and choking the people of Coketown forever and ever. It does not stop, neither at night nor at daytime, and never got uncoiled. It had a black canal. قناة صناعية مصنوعة, in which the wastes, فضلات factories, are dumped in this canal, and a river that ran purple. The river, which is supposed to be blue color, it ran purple with ill-smelling dye. صبغة, with a bad smell, which is color is purple, that covers the river, which are these are the wastes of the factories, and vast piles of building full of windows, من الbuildings full of windows مليئة بالشبابيك, where there was a rattling and a trembling all day long. حيث هنالك الهوسة والحركة والعمل all day long. And where the piston of the steam engines, البستن يعني البستم إذا سامعين به مال المحركات of the steam engine worked monotonously up and down like the head of an elephant in a state of melancholy madness. Elephant, when sometimes are angered, they act with some mad way. Sometimes, if you see their heads are moving right and left, up and down, to express their anger. So here it is compared to another metaphorical image, comparing the pistons and their movement, just like the movement of the elephant when it is mad or enraged. So it contained several large streets. Coketown, it contained several large streets, all very like one another. Here the writer highlights the similarity between things that gives an indication of monotony. تعطي انطباع بالرتابة الملل. This idea will be confirmed every now and then. The streets are very like one another, and many small streets still more like one another. Also the small streets, they look like each other. Inhabited by people equally like one another. Also the people are similar to each other, who all went in and out at the same hours, with the same sound, upon the same pavement, to do the same work, and to whom every day was the same as yesterday. Those people are suffering now. The suffering of the people is reflected in these two lines, because they live in these monotonous places. They have punctual times to move to work. For example, from sunrise, everybody goes out to the factories in order to do the work. On sunset, everybody comes back home to rest and move again for the next day. So those people were living in a very bad condition. Their conditions are very bad because they work monotonously for long hours. So according to those people, today is just like yesterday, because they worked hard yesterday, so they must work hard today, and they also must work hard tomorrow. So for them, every day was the same as yesterday and tomorrow, and every year the counterpart of the last and the next. So السنة كل سنة هي مشابهة للسابقة واللاحقة. These attributes of Coketown were in the main inseparable from the work by which it was sustained. So these are the qualities or description of Coketown, where people live. This is an important actually description of the city, because it gives us a kind of impression that this city is not suitable for living, because of the stains, because of the smoke, because of the ashes. So the writer tries to highlight the negative effect of the Industrial Revolution and how people suffer in such kind of places. They can't live a normal life, and their conditions are very bad. So the solitary exception was a new church. They have a church in this place, which is also similar to other places. All the public inscriptions in the town were painted alike, in severe characters of black and white. This idea also highlights the suffering. Black and white sometimes symbolizes death or symbolizes sickness, where there is no color, there is no life. The jail, also there is a jail in the city, might have been the infirmary. So the jail and the infirmary, the hospital, they look alike. You sometimes get mistaken to consider the jail as a hospital and the hospital as a jail. The infirmary might have been the jail. The town hall, القاعة الكبرى للمدينة, might have been either أما the jail or the infirmary. So these Similarities create an atmosphere of monotony and of sadness and desperate moments for the people. For anything that appeared to the contrary in the graces of their construction. Fact, 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 everywhere in the material aspect of the town. Fact, 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 everywhere in the immaterial. And then a reference to the school of Mr. Coketown, where fact is also highlighted in the city. A town so sacred to fact. We had this idea actually before. We understand that this town is occupied by the system of Gradgrind, which is representing the government. In these schools of the government we have facts. So no wonder Coketown is not a different city, which represents the whole country. No, Coketown did not come out of its own furnaces in all respects like gold that had stood the fire. We move to something important here. These are not important. You might just have an idea. Then came Gradgrind as planned in the previous chapter. Gradgrind and Bounderby were supposed to meet Sissy's father in order to dismiss Sissy from the school. So now came Gradgrind and Bounderby to meet Sissy's father, and by chance, before meeting Sissy, this man lives at Pod's End. Sissy's father, Mr. Juba, and I don't quite know Pod's End, said Gradgrind. Which is it? Bounderby also doesn't know this place. So this highlights that the place where the circus people, the fancy people live is neglected, and at the outskirts or the suburbs of the city, which even is not heard about, and those people do not know where it is. Mr. Bounderby knew it was somewhere downtown, but knew no more respecting it. They stopped for a moment, looking about. Almost as they did so, there came running around the corner of the street at a quick pace a frightened look, a girl whom Mr. Gradgrind recognized. "Hello," said he. "Stop, where are you going?" "Stop, girl number 20. And we have Sissy, palpitating, and made him a courtesy. "Why are you tearing about the streets?" said Gradgrind in this improper manner. "Why are you running in this place?" "I was run after." The girl panted. "تلهث." "And I wanted to get away." "Run after," repeated Gradgrind. All of a sudden, the colorless boy Bitzer, who came around the corner with such blind speed and so little anticipating a stoppage on the pavement. He was running after Sissy, and Sissy was very scared. That's why she was stopped by Gradgrind and Bounderby. "What do you mean, boy?" said Gradgrind. "What are you doing? How dare you dash against everybody in this manner?" Bitzer picked up his cap, which the concussion had knocked off, and backing and knuckling his forehead, pleaded that it was an accident. He apologized, and he said, "Was this boy running after you, Jupe?" asked Gradgrind. "Yes, sir." "No, I was not," cried Bitzer. "Not till she ran away from me." So from this kind of pursuit and running after, we understand that Bitzer was running after Sissy in order to teach her what a horse, how a horse could be defined according to the fact system. This is all about Bitzer and Sissy, why she was run after. And then girl number 20 said, Gradgrind, take this gentleman and me to your father. We are going there. They were planning to visit her father in order to ask him to take Sissy from the school. She was carrying something, a bottle. Gradgrind, Mr. Bounderby mocks Sissy. يسخر منها. Is this gin? The drink, the spirit drink? Dear me, sir, it is the 9 oils. 9 oils is a kind of medication. كأنه علاج. It is used to treat the bruises. يعالج الجروح اللي تحصل للشخص. Because as we know, Mr. Joop works at the circus, and sometimes he gets some bruises and injuries and wounds. So she went to take these 9 oil in order to rub father with. حتى تمسح her father with this 9 oil. They bruise themselves very bad sometimes. That's why she carries the 9 oil. So this is the content of chapter 5. The importance lies in the first part of the chapter where Coketown is described, and how it is described, the 2 metaphorical images the writer represented. And then we have Bounderby and Gradgrind walking and heading towards Sissy, and then the encounter with Sissy and Bitzer and why she was run after, because Bitzer wanted to teach her how to define a horse, and finally the idea of the 9 oils that treat the bruises of the people. So these are the most important points in chapter 5. Thank you.